Hello and welcome to this I-24 News breaking news edition. I'm Guy Azriel. Well, the sounds of explosions rippled through the Gaza Strip early this morning as the Israeli Defense Force launched a targeted campaign against Islamic Jihad, assassinating 3 senior members of the terror group. Now there are calls for retaliation as the IDF and PIJ prepare for further escalation. Our correspondent Nicole Sedek has the latest.
Explosions ripped through Gaza in the dead of night as Israeli forces launched a surprise operation dubbed Operation Shield and Arrow.
Terrorism is a threat to civilians everywhere. Islamic Jihad and its leaders have been threatening the security of Israelis for too long. The IDF has launched a targeted campaign against Islamic Jihad in Gaza.
Around 2 a.m., Israel assassinated 3 senior Islamic Jihad members in the Strip. Halil Bahtini, who commands Islamic Jihad in northern Gaza, Jahed Anam, a top official in the group's military council, and Tariq Azaldin, who directs Islamic Jihad activities in the West Bank from a base in Gaza. The airstrikes also killed nearly a dozen others, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, including the wives of the 3 commanders and a number of children. A military spokesperson says 40 aircrafts carried out the main strikes within seconds of each other at 3 different locations in Gaza. 10 sites were targeted as weapons and military compounds, including a workshop used to make rockets and a location holding concrete to build terrorist tunnels.
At this stage, we have achieved what we set for ourselves as a goal, and we have hit the one who has led the terrorism in the last months. Those who fire a barrage of rockets into Sderot in the middle of the day and endanger civilian lives, those who continuously work to harm Israel's security, will not be immune.
Although considered a successful operation, the IDF is now preparing for retaliation. Senior officials telling I-24 News they're expecting up to 150 rockets in a first wave of attacks, opening shelters throughout central Israel in preparation for a tense several days.
Our Nicole Sedek with that report. Well, let's take you live now to Nicole, standing by for us in Tel Aviv by the IDF headquarters. Nicole, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant holding consultations throughout the morning with a special cabinet meeting expected later this afternoon. What can we expect to come out of that meeting? What is next for Israel after this overnight operation?
Well, really, they are preparing for any possible retaliation. It's going on about 12 hours now since that initial attack, the Operation Shield and Arrow, and it's kind of a sense of tense calm right now as they do prepare for any retaliation all throughout Israel, but specifically also focusing on those areas in the south near the Gaza Strip. Even Defense Minister Yoav Gallant having a phone call with many of the mayors in those different municipalities, telling them to prepare citizens for a possible prolonged conflict. And so many of those municipalities, cities are taking those extra precautions, even shutting down roads in the south, some train routes, beaches, and of course educational facilities as well. But it's not just areas in the south that are taking these extra precautions. It's also here in central Tel Aviv or central Israel, as many other municipalities open up public bomb shelters, including some major cities such as Herzliya, Ra'anana, Ashkelon, and Beersheba. Even some of those other cities such as Ashkelon, Beersheba, even moving some of their hospital patients to more fortified areas in case any of the hospitals are hit in a possible retaliation attack. So we are seeing these preparations taking place really all throughout Israel right now as we prepare for anything. As some of those senior leaders did tell I-24 News, they are preparing for a large range of attacks, and even though it's happening in the Gaza Strip, as we saw just several weeks ago, they have to kind of prepare on all fronts, all borders of Israel, as we saw several weeks ago with rockets from Lebanon firing into Israel as well. So right now, authorities, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, they are also urging all of the citizens to really stay extra aware right now. It's a great time to look at all of the safety instructions provided by the Home Front Command to make sure you know where the nearest public bomb shelter is, or really what to do in case sirens are heard here in Israel.
Yes, a major sense of suspense at these hours across Israel. Nicole, Tzedek there in Tel Aviv. Thank you for that update. I want to go now to defense correspondent Jonathan Regev standing by for us over the phone. Jonathan, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant telling the municipalities in the south, we must be prepared for every scenario, including a long campaign. What would that entail, and how prepared is Israel for that possibility?
Israel is prepared for every possibility. The problem is that Israel doesn't know what exactly is going to happen. In this sense, the fact that the hours go by and there's still no response from Gaza adds to what you just described. There's a sense of suspense. Israel really doesn't know what it's going to. Is it going to a short campaign only with Islamic Jihad? Is it going to a longer campaign also involving Hamas? Will there be other arenas involved? You just spoke of the fact that it was only last month when rockets were fired from Lebanon as well. So many questions there. They depend much more at the moment on the other side, how the other side, the Palestinian factions, will decide to react. Israel has to be prepared for all the scenarios. Israel has to be prepared for the worst-case scenario, hoping that it will not happen, but understanding that it certainly can.
Jonathan Regev there with that update. Thank you for that. We want to go into studio now. Senior correspondent Owen Alterman. Owen, there's never a good time for Israel to start a campaign in Gaza. Obviously, we saw rocket launches just ahead of the Passover holiday last month and again last week. And nonetheless, the pressure on this government was to act, to give a more than that moderate response that we saw last week. So why is it happening now?
Look, first of all, obviously, in terms of the exact timing, because there was the intelligence and there was the opportunity, as so often happens. But, Guy, you're right. This is a bit of a change in policy. Israel, over the course of the last 20, 25 years, has, for large periods of time, targeted the leaders of terror groups. And, in fact, in the legal arena, the Israeli Supreme Court pioneered the legal approach to allow this, the kind of legal reasoning, for example, that was used to back up the killing of Osama bin Laden. So this is something that Israel's done over the course of time for much of the last 20, 25 years, but not in the recent past, not in the last few months. And this was something that Itamar Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, and his party were quite upset about, as we all know, and we're making a lot of hay over, as we all know, and we're really pushing the government to act. That said, these kinds of operations are not controversial in Israel. It was not only Itamar Ben-Gvir that was praising this. Once it was reported, it was also Yair Lapid, right, from the opposition, from the center-left, who himself sat in the prime minister's chair and presided over a military operation toward the Gaza Strip. So again, something that is within the Israeli consensus. As for why it's happening now, look, you're right, Guy, there's never a quote-unquote good time, but there are times that are less bad. And certainly when it's not falling through during the holy month of Ramadan, the sensitivities surrounding Ramadan and the Passover holiday and all that we remember from a few weeks ago may serve Israel's interest. And also just my own speculation, in 10 days' time, it's Jerusalem Day and that flag march, right, through the old city that has proven to be a provocation year in and year out. And in one case, 2 years ago, actually started a full-on military operation, some would say a full-fledged war between Israel and factions in the Gaza Strip in 2021. Maybe the thinking was to take an action now rather than wait for the factions to then be able to escalate after that flag march, and in some sense see Israel being put on its back feet, but instead have Israel be taking the initiative 10 days earlier and being showing to be the one in control of events rather than the one having events control them. That said, Guy, again, stepping back further into the big picture, there's not much new at the Gaza Strip. There's nothing new in Israel's strategy toward the Gaza Strip. There hasn't been anything really new in Israel's strategy for the most part with the Gaza Strip the last 20 years. It's about containing the operations and the actions and the capabilities of the terrorist groups there. Some have used the phrase mow the lawn, right? A chore that has to be conducted time and time again because, again, the lawn will continue to grow without anyone having any solution for permanently keeping the grass short. And that, again, has been Israel's strategy and continues to be.
Yes, and that is why we keep seeing these military operations. We keep seeing these rocket fire for so many years, and it's the Israeli citizens and many of these innocent people in Gaza who suffer from that situation. Owen Alterman, more from you right after the break. We're taking a 2 minutes break, and we're back.